Tēnei te karanga, tēnei te tangi. Kia tūwhera nā tātou I whai ao ki te ao marama te hei mauri ora. Tēnā koutou katoa tuatahi ki ngā mate, haere, haere atu rā. Tuarua ake e mihi ana nā mana whenua o te rohi o Ngāti whātua o rākei. Tēnā koutou, e mihi ana te āriki nui nā waihono I te pō. Rire hau, pai marire. Toru, kia tātou I tūnei, ka nui te mihi, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Click. Ko wai au, ko te whakapūnaki te mātou o Māui tiki a taranga te maunga, ko te wairo hopu hongingi ma tangirau te awa, ko taki te me te waka, ko Ngāti Kahungunu ki te wairo me Rongomaiwahine o ke iwi. Kei te puaha o Waikato, te kāinga, ko Natalia Sexton tōku ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I loved our whakatau at the beginning, where we had those amazing kaumātua, because often I forget to say why it's so important we do kōwaio or explain our place. So the shorthand version of what I just said was, I'm from the East Coast, and I live at Port Waikato. Does anyone know where Te Puaha o Waikato is? Choice! That's where I live. It's the centre of the universe, or my universe, and I love living out there. And this is part of the reason I live there. So this is my whānau in the middle. This is my great-grandmother here. Quite the woman, 3 husbands, 27 children. Yeah, that's my nan. She was also a shearer, miratini, and quite the exponent of maurako, so taiaha. So a lot of people think, like, women, that's not a wahine thing. It is on the East Coast. These are my 2 marae down the bottom. That's the view from my home at Te Puaha. This is my whānau at Te Puaha. This is us at in the USA. And this is our marae as well. So I'll talk about them a little later on, so I just wanted you to get a sense of who I am. But this, it's like a proverb. Has anyone heard about this one here? Whakapapa is a series of never-ending beginnings, a journey from potential to infinity. That's really special to me, and I guess if I think about what my why is, it's deeply connected to that slide there. You probably get to figure this out. I wear quite a few hats in my mahi and my Mahi Aroha, and I thought it was really important that we thought about that today. Before I get into my hats, a huge mahi and thank you to Te Ao Aotearoa Volunteering New Zealand for creating space and the opportunity to share more mātauranga about Mahi Aroha and celebrating the strength that comes from acknowledging diversity of thought and celebrating who we are in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Right, these are some of my hats. So I'm a mama, I've got 3 rangatahi. Ko rangatira to a very talented carver, so when we go through the slides you'll see lots of carving and drawings, that's all Reese's. I'm a kai whakamahaere mātua of our carving business, so that's called Ka Kinga Toi. Hau kainga to that marae I showed you. Tarahiti, so kupu hau for the day e te whānau Tarahiti trustee to 2 charitable trusts which fill my cup and bring a lot of joy to my life. And I'm also fortunate to be a kaimahi at Te Tari Tai Whenua. So I just wanted to share those different pōtaia hats because a lot of what I talk about today is my own views and what I think about the world. So just making that small disclaimer. Right. This is quite a famous whakataaki. Does anyone in the room know the difference between a whakatauki and a whakataaki? Yes. I love that answer. So with this one, do you think it's a whakatauki or a whakatauaki? whakatauaki because we know who said it. So when I think about Mahi Aroha, this is what I think about. And often we talk about the top part. So mahi atu mahi hei painga mō te iwi, and it gets cut off there. So this idea of what we do is for the benefit of our whānau hapu and communities. So that's really, really important in terms of who I am and what drives me. So Te Puia is really a prolific leader in the area that I live. And this work and what she's talking about here guides everything that we do out where I live, but also who I am as a person. So whangaia tangata and kia mau ki te aroha me te rangimarie. Any ideas what that might be talking about? Our reo experts in here? So those things that we hold on and that guide us. So aroha, love and peace. Rangimarie. Right, here's just a short video for you all.
Mahi Aroha is one and the same as kaupapa Māori. You would see Mahi Aroha every day at the marae of people who are coming to support a wedding, a tangihanga, a hui. You will see Mahi Aroha when we look after our elderly, when we take care of our babies, the convention of wāngai, looking after our children for the next generation. That's all Mahi Aroha. The strength of the community is only as good as the strength that we contribute ourselves.
Kia ora. That's just one of the videos that I really loved on the Volunteering New Zealand website. But when I watched that video, I think that's a really great explanation of what Mahi Aroha is from a whānau ora lens. So for those of you who know what whānau ora is, that gives a version of what Mahi Aroha might mean in that context. It can be used in other ways as well. So we'll just have a look at some other explanations as well. So what I did, I went and did this deep dive trying to find a definition and also trying to understand better from an ao Māori perspective, what do I think Mahi Aroha is? And what I found was this. Left-hand side. So there's quite a few different definitions or understandings of it. What is easier to find is why. So I think the purpose and context, a lot of people have come up to me and go, what do you think Mahi Aroha is, Natalia? I think it's easy to say why we do it, but not find a way of explaining it or a kupu, English or Māori, about what it actually is in those terms. So we've kind of adopted it. So these are some of the explanations on the left of what we've found so far in terms of literature and printed sources. To the right, when you talk to people, often these are the elements they will come to you with, which is whakapapa, mana, tuakiritanga is like our identity, manakitanga, collective benefit, service, need. So they're a bit easier to identify. And then, of course, the next thing Natalia did, because she's a bit of a geek, is went looking for all the written sources. And I managed to find three really neat reports. The first one was done back in 2007. And then we've got Dr. Cram's report in 2020. Does anyone know Fiona Cram? Yeah, she's quite a prolific researcher, evaluator in the ao Māori space. That one was a really good one, like what she wrote about COVID, but it had been commissioned by a housing organisation, so it was very focused on what they had asked of her. So that was kind of we were heading in the right direction. And then, of course, there's the VNZ report that many of you know about, which again was great, but quite a small sample size in terms of some of the findings and recommendations. So I guess the other thing I've been asking myself as well is, in this space, what's the difference between research and rangahau? I've got some definitions up there, but does anyone else have any insights into what they think about it or what the difference might be from their perspectives? I think it's where we place our people, and, you know, at the centre, because often in research we try to be a little bit detached and objective about it. Rangahau actually embraces that. And so that definition that I've got up there kind of captures what that means when we have a focused and centred view in terms of ao Māori. Right, I've got another video coming up. Pūrākau are like narratives or stories that are fundamental to who we are. So this one I'm going to play for you is about Mata Ora and Niwareka. So it's the story of tāmoko, but also how we brought weaving to us in Aotearoa. So I'm going to play that for you, and then what I want you to do is have a think about what the heck has that got to do with volunteering in Mahi Aroha.
The legend of Mata Ora and Niwareka. The love affair between Mata Ora and Niwareka dates way back to ancient times. Mata Ora was a young warrior, and his wife Niwareka was a beautiful maid who came from Rauhina, the wonder world and realm of the spirits. They were happy for some time until Mata Ora became jealous and enraged. So it came about that he struck his wife. Niwareka then fled to be with her people in Rauhina. Mata Ora mourned for Niwareka, so he set out to find her. Before he left to find Niwareka, he dressed in his finest garments and painted his face, hoping he could win back her love. After many trials and overcoming many obstacles, Mata Ora eventually arrived in Rauhina, exhausted and his face paint messed up and dirty from his voyage. Niwareka's family mocked and taunted Mata Ora for his unsightly appearance, as their bodies were permanently beautified with tāmoko. In his humble state, Mata Ora begged for forgiveness from Niwareka and her family, and, admiring their exquisite tattooed body patterns, he asked Niwareka's father, Uetonga, if he could learn the art of tāmoko from him. Niwareka and her family eventually accepted Mata Ora's apology, and Uetonga agreed to teach him the art of tāmoko, while Niwareka learned how to do taniko, the art of fine weaving. Mata Ora and Niwareka then returned to the human world, bringing with them the art of tāmoko and taniko.
That video is about 10 years old. It's like, you imagine if you did it with AI now, it'd be a little different, eh? Pātaimai, any ideas what we might think in terms of the context of pūrākau and narratives about what insights that might give us in terms of Mahi Aroha and things that we can learn from our past to inform our future? Any ideas? Do you think they came back with tāmoko and started selling it straight away? Or do you think, in terms of weaving and fine arts, if we think about rāranga, those gifts that they brought back from the underworld, what that would have done for hapu, iwi, whānau back in the day? The reason I brought this pūrākau forward actually is when I was talking to the toi whakaido practitioner, the carver, I said, oh, yeah, what do you think about Mahi Aroha? And he referred me to this pūrākau. And I went, oh, okay. And so I went off and watched the online version. I knew the story anyway. But for him, the reason that Niwareka and Mataora went there was Mahi Aroha, for each other, for what they brought back, and also what that meant for our people when they returned. So even though they don't talk about Mahi Aroha in the story, it's woven through it in terms of how we see the world and we think, and the values in that pūrākau influence the mahi that we do in terms of each other and what we do for our people. So that's really important in a 2025 context, thinking about those values and how they influence where and what we do in terms of Mahi Aroha. That part of the story, that part of the narrative is missing at the moment in the rangahau and research space in this area. So I think there'll be a lot of answers and solutions if we go back and do that mahi around pūrākau. The next thing I think actually needs to happen is wānanga. Who's been to a wānanga? Yeah? How would you explain them for maybe people who aren't Māori? Totally. Place of learning. Do you think they have like a set agenda? No. No, not at all. And so when we wānanga, we'll come on a kaupapa, it might be Mahi Aroha, and you should see the places we go in terms of subject areas and connections and all the things that can be covered. But I think wānanga are really important in this context because of what they do for mātauranga. People often think mātauranga is just Māori knowledge, but it's that point of enlightenment. Mātauranga means to enlighten, not just knowledge in its contemporary sense. So I think we need to be doing more of that, having wānanga about Mahi Aroha, who knows, it might be in the year of the volunteer, where we come together and think about what it means in Aotearoa in the past, present and future. But yeah, definitely places for transmission, which is also on the slide. So some of the questions I was thinking about that you and all your valid experience would be really great to be thinking in your roles was, how do we create more opportunities for rangahau and research about Mahi Aroha? Because it's really hard to find a definition. It depends on context. Wouldn't it be great if we all knew what it was or what it meant today? How can we partner more with tangata whenua? I think that's also really, really critical. So thinking about those sorts of things we can do in that space. And then also, because I'm big on impact at the moment, what impact might that produce for communities, volunteering sector and Aotearoa New Zealand as well? So the other one, if we go back to the beginning, I was talking a lot about framing. So what's an alternative frame we could use? Often we talk a lot in Te Ao Māori about te kore, te pō and te ao marama. That offers a possible framework for a way forward. So te kore is like the nothing, te pō is like the night, te ao marama is the day, or the dawn. So looking and utilising te ao Māori frameworks might also be a possible way forward in terms of thinking about Mahi Aroha. So just my last slide, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to be here and also thank you for your mahi that you do. I hope this mahi and kōrero will be useful going forward and gives you something to think about. And the alignment also with what all our speakers have said today in terms of diversity and also our growing and changing demographics. But I just wanted to ask if anyone had any questions, insights or thoughts they wanted to share today. Happy to take any questions if you've got any. Or it might be insights about what you're doing in the Mahi Aroha space, what you've learnt during COVID. we don't have any of the answers at the moment. This was just an opportunity to think more about what it might look like.
Natalia, I do have a question, and Michelle, just not for the prize. This is something that I have been thinking of. We know the demography in New Zealand is changing, and I'm staying on my lane of what I was discussing earlier of new migrants coming in and embracing life and work through volunteering. How and where do they reach out to learn about Te Ao Māori, the Māori world philosophy, and embrace it in their daily lives, and embrace it as a fabric of this country? And so, therefore, feel more integrated and,
So are you saying, Mo, are you wanting to know how you could be part more of Mahi Aroha or understanding Mahi Aroha better?
As tangata tiriti,
Aye.
how, as tauiwi, how do we understand this better so that we understand the concept of volunteering from a very different perspective, not from a Mahi Aroha perspective,
Aye.
but integrate the two so that we feel one with the fabric of this country?
I think it's doing your own work, whatever that looks like, doing your own rangahau, doing your own work in this space. Some of the people today have talked about integrating and understanding te reo being a pathway to understanding. It can be part of it. We had an interesting story actually at our table about where someone was wearing a hat as a volunteer leader, but was also Māori, and then went back to their marae and said, does anyone want to come and volunteer for my organisation? Not to put the person on the spot, I won't say who they are. But then often our kaumātua say, well, why don't you volunteer here? So in the context of what you're saying, I think it's relationships. It's being connected to the area where you're from and knowing more about who mana whenua are there and building those relationships. Because you'll find that when you're part of a community, especially out where I am, we have people coming to our marae all the time who aren't Māori. And a part of what we do when we have tangihanga or birthdays or things of that nature and lending a hand, because they are part of who we are and they help when we're needed and stuff. So yeah, I think language is always a really great pathway in terms of te reo. I think it's understanding where you're from, but also valuing the place of mana whenua as well. Yeah.
So we're delivering volunteer programs into almost every prison across the motu, and with the really, really significant overrepresentation of particularly Māori in the justice system, our volunteers are engaging with a lot of particularly young Māori men from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of iwi. Lots of them are quite disconnected from their whakapapa.
Yes.
Do you have any recommendations for ways that we can support them respectfully, engage respectfully without overstepping our boundaries as tangata tiriti and as a non-kaupapa Māori organisation?
Brilliant question. A lot of my work outside of what I'm doing at the moment has been in those spaces where we're trying to forge pathways forward. So I guess my advice would be partnering with our experts in that area. So again, knowing who our mana whenua is, because often they will put you in contact with a provider or a marae who will support in that area, be it whānau ora, or even though our contemporary urban marae as well, for those people where we can't find whakapapa. So I'd recommend, like what you would do, go and talk to an expert. If you don't know who to talk to, I tell you who always knows is the Citizens Advice Bureau, or your local kaumātua, Or if you've got a teacher at a school who's been there for like 30 years, they're really great to talk to as well, because often they'll be problem solvers. But all of it's relationships. And I think we all bring something to the table, and knowing what you're giving as well as taking, that's really fundamental in terms of our people that I've worked with anyway. I don't want to use the proverbial smelling or telling bullshit or whatever everyone was talking about before. But often mana whenua people will come and want something, want to know something, who to do, what to talk. So think about also what you bring, because often it'll be knowledge, resources, data, all of those things. So think in the long term, but also it's not just when you want something. What can you give back? So I guess from a volunteering framing, that's a really good lens to bring in, because we know it's not for the money that you're there. So maybe using that as you start thinking about how I can connect up our whānau who've lost their connections.
Thank you.
Ka
And
pai.
thank you to the Citizens Advice Bureaus across the country.
Yeah. Any other pātai? Can be about anything that you've wondered about. Oh, yeah, see, we're warming up. I knew we'd get there.
Thank you. Kia ora for your kōrero. And what my question is around, and we talked in a session earlier about obligation to serve. Mahi Aroha is no different, you know, in terms of, from a cultural perspective, Māori, Pacific and many Asian communities wouldn't even see it as volunteering, and we don't have systems in place to measure that aspect of volunteering, and yet it's a huge part of these communities.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering whether you have any suggestions in terms of how can we teach people to, I mean, we've obviously got our census data, but again, if they're not seeing it in that light, they're not answering it in that light.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering how we can get better at capturing those aspects.
No, definitely. Kia ora for your question. I've been thinking a lot about that, and especially with us not collecting census data. I really think that's why I brought up the slides about research and rangaho being really pivotal in this area. So knowing our evidence base, for want of a better word, knowing our pūrākau, having opportunities to wānanga and figure that out in a 2025 context. Really important with the conversations we're having at the moment in respect of, what's that new SOI fund? Social, you know, with the police, that former police minister, social investment agency. So going forward, there's going to be people are needing to quantify things to access resources, but having that done in a way that one upholds tikanga and kawa, the data aspect of that in terms of data sovereignty, that's huge. But I really think starts by having the conversations and having the opportunity to wānanga together. Sometimes we have to do work apart, but there's also that place of coming together, especially with all your collective expertise. So I guess that's my call to you, whether you want to use a tangata tiriti frame, whether you want to use an equity lens, what can we do to be mātauranga-led in this space? How can we value that? Because if we don't know what it is and we can't explain it, it often gets missed, especially like if you're thinking from a policy perspective. So a lot of that kōrero's come through today, and I've been thinking about that too. So yeah, I think there's small things that we can do locally, regionally and nationally, you know, that would be amazing. But I think it starts with the conversation. So today's presentation was just, not to freak you out, just to have an opportunity to think about maybe can we look at things differently? How might we reimagine volunteering in this space? How can we be inclusive of each other? Kia ora.
Kia ora.